Welcome to Great Loop Radio, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA, and today we are thrilled to have back with us Chad Buchner. He is coming to us from the Trent Severn Waterway, and he's got some general updates about how this season is going so far, and also will share some of the highlights of the Trent Severn system with us. So before we jump in with Chad, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Curtis Stokes and Associates, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And with that out of the way, Chad Buchner, thanks so much for being back with us today.
Hey, thank you, Kim. It's always a pleasure to be back, and nice to be in a little bit better of a situation right now to be talking to all of you here from a sort of a hot, sunny day here in Peterborough.
Yes, and I guess we last saw you at an AGLCA event, at least in the Spring Rendezvous back in early May, and I know you've been really busy since then getting ready for the season to get started. And I guess it kind of started with a bang up there for you, but let's start for those who are maybe new to Great Loop Radio and watching and listening to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do there for the Trent Severn.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, my name is Chad Buchner. I'm the manager of operations. So I oversee all operations of the Trent Severn Waterway and also the visitor experience program. I've been working with Parks Canada and specific on the waterway since 1999. My father was also a lockmaster on the system. So I spent a lot of my time sort of around canals and around boating and specifically around these locks. So, I'm born and raised in Peterborough, but very fortunate, especially with the job that I do. So, I've spent time managing the Rideau Canal, the Trent Severn Waterway, from the operations, the maintenance, but also get to travel quite a bit and spent a lot of time, even in around New York. So, and working in partnership with the New York State canals too. So always a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure to be here in front of the loopers and with this group, but very importantly, it's a great pleasure to manage this system of truly spectacular canals and probably the best boating ground in the world. And getting to welcome people like the loopers that come from all over, not over the United States, Canada, and everywhere in between. So it's great to be a part of this and getting to hear, sort of everyone's experiences through their own eyes. And I'm sort of fortunate through that. So yeah, very fortunate here, and lucky to have some of the best staff in the world that work for me as well. And, even hearing stories, just the other day from, a couple of our loopers as well, from getting to have the experiences with Scott and some of our team members down in Lock 6 and unfortunate circumstances right now.
Yeah, and most loopers do put a positive spin on things. So let's start with the good news. So there has been a closure on the Waterway, but you kind of have some good news for us related to that closure. So let's start with the good news, and then we'll back into what was going on in the last week or so.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll resume our operations, for the entire Trent Severn Waterway from Trenton Lock 1 all the way up to Lock 27 in Young's Point. We'll be back to normal service, normal operations effective tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And for those listening, maybe after tomorrow's June 24th, Friday morning at 9 a.m., we'll be fully operational for the entire system.
Yeah. So by the time we put this out there, the system will already be fully operational. So let's make sure everyone has that straight, because we know there are loopers kind of stacking up, waiting to go into the Trent Severn, because it is considered by many to kind of be the crown jewel of the Great Loop. And of course, the system was opened. Tell us a little bit about when you opened for the season, and then what kind of led up to the closure that's been going on for the last, not even a week, but the last 4 or 5 days, I guess.
Yeah. So we opened on Friday, May 20th. We got off to a fairly good start. So, I think the last time I was down with the entire group, we were just rapidly getting open, draining off a lot of the meltwater. And we're actually into, ironic, a fairly dry spell up here in Canada where we hadn't seen rain in a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, our spring rain that we're accustomed to and used to, instead of that hitting in April or the early part of May, that sort of caught us in June. So we dealt with a lot of rain across our entire watershed from Halliburton, and for those Canadian up to the system all the way up to Algonquin Park, across the entire watershed. experience, a month worth of rain within a couple days. And due to that, just with the rising water levels and moving that water through our dam system, we had to open up a lot of our dams. And when we get past a certain threshold of water flow, it just becomes very challenging and a safety concern for us, for boaters traveling, especially near our lock systems and lock chambers. So we made a very difficult decision, and we're optimistic that it would be a quick decision, which thankfully it was, to suspend operations for the bottom half of our system, from Lock 27, Young's Point, down to Trenton, due to the water velocities that we were moving through. But again, I will honestly say thank you to our team that our lock tenders also operate the lock, or the dams that operate that regulate the water level, sorry. And they've been fast at work in moving all of this water through and opening up all of our dams and ensuring that our boaters were secured in reasonable locations where, knowing we'd probably be 5 days to up to 10 days, depending on if we had any rain. So moving all that water through the system really afforded us a good opportunity to get back open and back operational with seasonal water levels and seasonal water flows for this time of year, which puts us in good condition for the rest of the operating season.
Yeah. And, a lot of the people who will watch and listen to this are on the loop right now. A lot are planning on looping in the coming years. So I'm sure people are curious about the loopers and the other boaters who were already in the system when the closure started. So of course you kind of prevented others from leaving Trenton and heading into the system. But so one of the looper couples I think you were alluding to earlier is aboard Compass Rose, and that is one of the boats who was already in the system. So kind of explain when you decide, okay, it's going to be necessary for the boater's safety to have those boats, you're suspending operations. What do you do? Where do you place the boats that are already in the system? How do you make those decisions?
Yeah, so what we'll tend to do is we'll go and use our lock personnel that are working the stations and grab, an idea of where the boaters are, where they're going, how many boats, the style of vessels that they are. And then from there, looking at the lake levels that we have above us, managing that, and then giving timely warning to typically the boaters that are in the system will find out before the media actually finds out. It's ironic with the power of social media now. The idea that we were closing actually broke the news before we actually even had a chance to get to the media, because our lock staff members were working with those boaters to determine where they were ended up going or where they were intending on getting to arrive at that destination. And that's how we base our decisions on, to not try to inconvenience people too much, to get them to a secure landing spot, ideally for us in operations, and me particular, in a reach that's a little bit larger. Because some of the challenges when you move this kind of water through a system, and especially a narrow river, many of our locks for those loopers that are traveling through, we'll see they're very short reaches. They're not very long, especially in the southern area. So those tend to rise and fall really quick. So we try to secure our boats to spots within communities that I talk about all the time. So there's other activities for them to do, to our locations that have shore power, and also in particular to our lock stations that have a bigger reach, so we can better manage that. And then throughout the closure, we take indication of where those boat traffic are, and then our lock staff will check in with them every day. And then we watch the water levels in a 24-hour basis and put basically indicators on there to make sure that our water levels don't fluctuate too much to put any of those boat traffic that are there in harm. So a lot of work goes in. It's sort of funny, even we're just resorting back to now that we're opening tomorrow and sort of going through everything. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but fairly happy that we were able to complete it fairly quickly with a really strong team. And most importantly, get back to operating and doing what we do best, and that's locking boats.
Yeah. And like I said, we've heard from members who were part of that process, and and everyone would certainly like to be able to be on their way, but they really had, it sounds like, a fabulous time where they stayed put. I think they were at Hastings, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they enjoyed that time. They enjoyed the town. So, kind of making lemonades out of the lemons that they were served. But, I think from doing this for a while, a lot of the lock closures become some of people's, best moments on the loop, because we've seen it on the Erie Canal. We've seen it in the Trent Severn. When things, floods, whatever other weather events cause those closures, people really get to stay put and learn about the town that they're in, and the locals are always so helpful. So I think it's been a good experience for the people that were already in the system, and I know that there are many more getting ready to head your way. So now that we've kind of covered what's been going on currently, I'd like to shift and talk a little bit about to what folks can expect this year in particular, but kind of in general from the Trent Severn. So before we make that shift, let me just pause for a moment and play a message from one of our sponsors, and we'll come back and talk about the beauty of the Trent Severn. So we'll be back in a moment. Our friends at Argo Navigation have created a free boating app that gives AGLCA boaters an easier way to plan their trip, navigate safely, and share information with fellow loopers. Argo has nautical chart coverage throughout North America, auto or manual routing, depths and tracks to avoid shallow water, trip details while en route, and a captain's log to save everything. You can also see other boaters, message them, and share experiences with in-app social features. Coming soon is a premium version with weather, wind, tides, offline charts, and more. Download the Argo Boating app on the App Store or Google Play. We're back on Great Loop Radio. Our guest today is Chad Buchner. He is the manager of operations for the Parks Canada, I guess all the canals for Parks Canada for Ontario and Quebec. And he is today sharing with us about the Trent Severn. So Chad, let's talk a little bit. First of all, I've heard from a few people recently who were a little bit worried because they did not pre-order their lockage and mooring passes online. So tell us where people can pick those up once they're ready to enter the system if they didn't pre-order those.
Yeah, and especially I think it's very important to say that before you set sail, especially if you don't get into the early bird promotions that we operate. If you're going to be on our system within 10 days, I strongly recommend to just purchase your permits at the very first lock station that you come to. So all of our lock staff members, they have the ability to sell all of the suite of permits that we have. So for any loopers coming across the water, whether they're going to be entering in Kingston, Ottawa, or if on the Rideau, if they're coming over to the Trent in Trenton or towards Severn, the very first lock station you come to, just see one of our lock staff members and they'll be able to sell you the full suite of permits. So strongly recommend now, especially just buy those permits when you come to the first lock.
And good to know, because I think some people who didn't think or didn't know to order them online heard from others who had ordered them online and were a little bit worried it was something that had to be shipped to them. So they will be very glad to know that they can take care of that at the first lock station they come to. Explain also the difference, because this seems to cause some confusion for loopers sometimes. You have lockage passes and mooring passes, or permits, I guess, locking and moorage. So explain, whether loopers would need both of those or if just one of them.
Yeah, it really depends on how long you're going to be on our system. So you're definitely, so a lockage permit allows you to lock through all of our lock stations. So for the loopers, there's two in particular. There's the seasons permit, which I do recommend the seasons permit. So if you're going to be going up and down, or you want to do a few of our signature assets a few times, or if you have friends or family coming in and you want to revert back to do, whether it be a particular town or whatnot, a seasons permit gets you unlimited locking all summer long on all canals that are operated in Canada. Now, a mooring permit gives you the ability to stay overnight at any one of our lock stations or our parks, whether it be in the Thousand Islands, Georgian Bay Islands, the Trent Severn, the Rideau, or Quebec. And a season's mooring permit is unlimited stays at any of our lock stations as you're going through. So those are the three permits. And then again, I guess I missed the transit permit. So a transit permit is a very popular permit with this group because it's a one-way passage. So it's as many, like all of the locks, if you start in Trenton and you have no way you're going to turn around and do other locks again, it's just a one-way pass. So it's Trenton to Port Severn and all the way through the system. And that's slightly cheaper. That is $5 per foot for a transit permit, and for a seasons permit, which is unlimited locking, is $9.50. And very important, Kim, and for all the loopers, talk to the lock staff before you buy your permits when you go to the lock stations. Talk to them about your trip and your plans of travel and the kind of traveler that you are. They are a great resource, and they'll be able to guide you to what's the most appropriate permit to buy.
Okay, excellent. That's really helpful. So for those who are kind of new to this whole concept, tell us why the Trent Severn is so popular and why it's kind of, one of the gems of the Great Loop. This is your chance to brag on the system a little bit.
I think I can do that. I think for most of your people that have seen me speak before or have met me before, they know how passionate we are about, all of our systems here. But the Trent specifically, again, for me, I'm a little biased. I'm born and raised here, but there's no other place in the world that you can boat that you get a system of, small towns that like are truly built around the canal. The canal was here, and then these little towns came in after, and they're really all have these unique small town Canadian charm to them. So you got a mix of rivers, you have a mix of historically operated locks to where our lock staff walk around in circles and then they open the gates the way that they would have been designed, and still with the same operating procedures that were done, in the early 1900s when they opened. And then you have sort of what I call sort of the engineering marvels of our system, where there's the only places that you're going to go in North America and you're going to, be at the Peterborough lift lock, which is the world's highest hydraulic lift lock. And, not like a lock at all, where it's two bathtubs on a teeter totter, covered in basically 100-year-old concrete that lifts boats on an elevator up 65 feet to the other side, and it's only 90 seconds. So it's over before you know it. So even if you're afraid of heights, you can close your eyes, and in less than 2 minutes, you'll be on the top and on your way. So it's quite the experience. And then further up the system, when you get in through the heart of the Kawarthas are really what Canadians do to go and enjoy cottage country. So, it's just an hour and maybe 10 minutes from Toronto. It's a series of lakes, that is really truly encaptures everything it is about recreational boating. You go through Stony Lake and there's Sunday church services that are on an island, restaurants that are on islands that you can only go to by boat, festivals and regattas that, are still in existence from, the early 1900s. And then moving further up into our small town charm, communities along the way, you get into another hydraulic lift lock like Peterborough, which is ironically the second highest hydraulic lift lock in the world, and that's Kirkfield, to where instead of concrete, it's steel. So it's all made of steel and a steel webbing structure that raises boats 47 feet, up and down into the up and down to the two different water bodies. So really spectacular. And in the very top of our system, where traveling outside of Lake Simcoe and heading into Georgian Bay, we have the only marine railway in North America and around. I haven't even seen another one except for in China, but it's the Big Chute Marine Railway that takes the boats high and dry out of the water over a 3-story high cart, over a cliff, across the road, and into the other side, where really you get an amazing vista when you're up there and sort of going over. And one of my favorite things is sort of watching all the land-based people sort of looking up at you as they're driving on this cottage road. And then they see this massive sort of train cart carrying massive boats going over the road and into the other side. It's really one of those real special treats and a real engineering marvel as well. So that's, I think, besides the water and besides the community and the cleanliness and the friendliness that you will experience when you travel through the system, not only from our staff, but our locals, it really is a system of navigation that's one truly special with the assets that we have, the people that operate them, but it's a community that's just built around boating. So there's just such a passion for boaters. And I think in particular, the loopers themselves, you guys are like really have a massive fan club in Ontario, where there is such an energy around the loopers, where it's honestly, every time I'm out in the field, and now that there's a lot of people who really understand the loopers relationship with us in Parks Canada, it's one of the most prominent questions that I get. How many loopers are on the system? When are they coming? Where are they? What boat has traveled the farthest to get here? And it's really one of those special things. And that's what I think really makes our system so unique and special, is just all of those elements that just sort of play perfectly together that presents our canal.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great overview, and that it's kind of a mutual fondness, because the loopers always are raving about the staff on the Trent Severn and the lock staff and the locals. And I know, Chad, you have done a remarkable job of kind of bringing that passion that you have, having grown up on the system, and instilling that in the lock masters that are, college students working for the summer or professional lock masters. It doesn't seem to matter. They all seem to be, really excited about what they're doing, which is just great to see and really makes for a great experience for loopers because they love to talk about their adventure. We love to hear about the local towns. And, that's part of the adventure for us as loopers is to find out more about the local areas. So I'm hope to be there in about 2 weeks. I'm super excited, but kind of tell us at a minimum, how much time should loopers expect to take to go through the Trent Severn? How many days should we set aside at a minimum? And then kind of on the high end, if you want to stop and see and do everything there is to see and do on the Trent Severn, how much time would you say they should allow for that?
So I'd say minimum 7 days to do the entire system. It's been done quicker. It's been done in 5 over the last few years, but I would say realistic 7-day travel with sort of normal days of travel in between. Now, on average, the average looper now is traveling through our system in 14 to 15 days, right in between those 2 marks. And that's from the time they enter into Trenton and exit out of Port Severn. Personally, I feel like that is the most reasonable amount of time because that's going to allow you to stop in the little communities, be a part of the communities, and you don't want to rush through this. And I think that's probably the one point when I'm in front of the audience with you guys in person is you've traveled all this way. You've made the decision to venture into another country and to come and see our system and navigation. You might not do it again. So I think you have to really take the time, watch the locks operate before you go through, immerse yourself within this community and everything else. So like do the locks multiple times, get your photos, get your videos. So personally, I think 15 days would be what I would travel through with my own family if I was going through from start to finish, but we could do it in just under a week if we needed to.
Mhm. So give us, some of the stats. How many miles is the whole system? How many locks? Because that also might help people to kind of, put some parameters around their planning.
Yeah, so 202 miles from start to finish, and 44 lock stations, over our entire system. And for people planning through, you'll start slower because the lock stations at Trenton to Hastings are closer together. On average, it takes about 20 minutes to go through a normal conventional lock that we have. And then you're going to have your natural stops in Frankfurt, in Campbellford, Hastings, Peterborough, Lakefield, and then up into Bobcaygeon, Buckhorn, Fenland Falls. So once you get into the heart of our system, it's odd. Everything opens up because we have a lot of lakes in that spot, but as much as it opens up, we actually slow down going through there because there's a lot to take in. Like each community or each lock station in those central lakes are communities. So you won't travel quite as far as you normally would as you would in the southern area, where in the southern area, you're doing about an average of 6 locks a day. Most loopers are doing 6 locks a day. And then when you get up into the Kawarthas, you're doing 1, maybe 2 locks a day until you exit out the system in Port Severn.
Now we have a lot of loopers who prefer marinas, and we have a lot of loopers who prefer to anchor. And of course, many also enjoy tying up to a lock wall when it's in the heart of town. So are there ample resources of all of those? And I also know there are a few lock walls on the Trent Severn system that actually have power as well. So if you could point those out to us also. So that was kind of 2 questions in one, but kind of tell us what kind of, so go ahead and kind of give us your impression of dockage, walls to tie up, and anchorages. And obviously we're talking about a wide spectrum of geography as well. So just kind of, the highlights of any places we should expect any issues.
So I'd say let's start with maybe people who are more prone to anchoring out into the system. Expect to anchor out more in the lakes. So the rivers, and especially right now, we're still moving a lot of water from the rain events that we've had. So in the river sections in our system, they're fairly narrow. So remember, our dams are attached to our lock stations. So, at this point until probably better part of maybe mid-July, I wouldn't recommend anchoring on river sections. So that would be from Trenton to Hastings. In particular, I would recommend staying at our lock station walls. Once you get through Peterborough, everything opens up quite a bit. The only thing that we would recommend is not to anchor, obviously, inside the navigational channel. And there is a resource, it's the Ports book. I use it myself. They have a really good highlight of all of the different anchorages as to where you can, and a pretty good overview of some of the different marinas across our system. So 2 resources that I think are reasonably important if you're going to travel through for the first time. One is the Ports Guide, the Ports booklet. And then the other one is the Boating Ontario Guides for Marinas. That lists all the marinas across Ontario, but also all of their amenities and services that are provided. You can pick those up at our lock stations as well when you go through and grab those. So I recommend those items for anyone traveling through, especially for the first time. So to stay overnight, so we've added shore power as well. We call it shore power in Canada. So we have shore power Frankfurt, and then the shore power now just added at Lakefield. The Buchner lock, the Bob Cajun lock, Fenland Falls lock are the ones that we actually have shore power. The other lock stations are all fairly close proximity to marinas as well. But we are working on expanding our shore power connectivity. But in those particular spots, especially in July, you'll probably need a generator to run to keep the AC going, because the one thing we do know, like today, it gets pretty hot up here. So especially in the evening. So those are the spots where I'd recommend. And for those people, I'll hit a few and I'll just sort of ad lib on a couple of your questions, Kim. So where if you're looking for community activities, there's plenty, right? So if I'm going to come through the system and I want to have more activities, or to see a little maybe bigger city or do the restaurant stuff, the communities I'd be going to, small community, but Campbellford. Peterborough is probably a day where I'm going to spend a few days, but I'm going to stay in the Peterborough Marina. It's right downtown, right in the heart of Peterborough, steps from all of the restaurants, the theater, and anything else that you might do. All of our lock stations going from there in all the small communities are right in those communities. So Lakefield's close, Buckhorn's small community, but right in the heart. Bob Cajun is the lock station is the community. Same with Fenland Falls. And then Aurelia. Aurelia is one of those spots when you get out through the Talbot River and heading over to Lake Simcoe. I strongly recommend going to the community of Aurelia before you pass out of our system on the entire way. For the couple of the boaters that maybe like a little bit more peace and quiet, and maybe don't want to maybe get more of the authentic wilderness or Canadian experience, and just looking for a quieter night, I strongly recommend, I wouldn't have anyone skip by Lovesick. Lovesick's Lock 30 on our system. It's an island. So it's the one spot where you'll be able, there's 2 spots in particular, but Lovesick is that one spot where you'll be able to hide from the fan club of looper lovers, and because you can only get to it by boat. So Lovesick is that peace and quiet location. And the other one on the very high end of our system, Swift Rapids. It's so isolated that our lock staff boat in and out of work every day, and very quiet. You can see quite literally every star in the sky up there. So both locations, if you're looking for that quiet night, I recommend that. But most importantly, our lock staff, I cannot rave about them enough. They're your concierge service on the ground. They know the answers to pretty much every question. They're more knowledgeable than I am. So if you're going through the system and you just tell them what your expectations are and what you're looking for, they'll guide you to exactly ensure that your needs are met with the expectations and the nights that you're looking to have.
Can't wait. It's all very exciting. A very important question for you, though. There are many loopers who are partial to butter tarts, which is a Canadian pastry, as you know, Chad, as many of them may not. I myself am partial to Kawartha Lakes ice cream. Can't get enough of that. So what are some of the, some of your favorite sweets, whether it's butter tarts or ice cream or something totally different, that we can stir the pot a little bit with the controversy over what the best thing is?
Oh my God, that's a great question, but I'm probably the worst one for it because I don't have much of a sweet tooth. It's sort of weird. Like I'm one of the rare ones who's not heavy on the sweet tooth, but I'll tell you this. So my youngest daughter is 8, lives and dies by poutine. Like even to the point where it's weird. She'll go to a fast food restaurant and try to order poutine. And we're like, no, you just can't. Like, so you have to do the chip trucks. Like, so you can't come through the system without, experiencing chip trucks. Like, just every community has them. Again, my youngest, she could probably tell you exactly where the best poutine truck is. She's going to be biased in Peterborough. But that's my secret treat for her. You've nailed the ice cream.
Mhm.
Again, it's probably the advantage that we have here with the amount of dairy farmers around. We have a couple really great ice cream spots. Myself, I'm a small town restaurant kind of guy. I personally, that's probably my favorite thing, is just going into these communities and hitting restaurants and locally owned restaurants. But again, I don't eat many of the desserts. But
Yeah.
my son the other day, he ordered, which is odd, at one of these trucks, and he was raving about a deep fried Mars bar. It's so weird,
Really?
so weird. But the key thing is cheese curd. Cheese curd's big, so it's that's what we make our poutine out of. The chocolate factory I always go to in when I'm going through Campbellford. You can't go through Canada without hitting one of our bakeries and hitting our donut shops. We absolutely love donuts. I like donuts. So you know what, Kim? I forgot. There is one. Sorry.
Okay.
I got it now. When I go to Campbellford, I cannot leave Campbellford without getting this donut. It's at Dewar's Bakery. It's a wagon wheel kind of donut, cut in half, filled with whipped cream and a chocolate glaze over the top of it. It's the Dewar's Donut Special Donut. You have to get there in the morning because it goes quick. So it's right in the downtown of Campbellford. And normally I don't recommend private businesses, but that is my spot. And now thinking about it, I'm actually starting to salivate. So it's the Dewar's Donut by far. That's
Sounds
the number
delicious.
one.
I will definitely check that out. Before we wrap up, anything I didn't ask about or any tips that you have for those who are headed your way?
No, I don't. I think the best tip that I could always give, especially when you're on the water, I think it is a very important note. Our team members, they understand sometimes. You're away from home. Many of your people traveling, you're in a different country. Some of you are thousands of miles away from your family, or sometimes just connecting the little things. So they understand that, and they really appreciate everybody coming back. And I can tell you, especially over the last couple very difficult years with COVID, there is such an excitement right now for this group and all of you to enter back into our country. And my team is very excited about it. So the most important tip is just immerse yourself with them, talk, get to know them, especially when you're staying overnight. They're some of the most friendliest people around, and they will guide you to the best cup of coffee. They'll guide you to the donuts that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
or to their favorite things. While I might not have a sweet tooth, if you met a lot of my staff, they have a pretty good sweet tooth. They'll guide you to that certain spot within their community. So that's my number one tip.
Perfect. And I actually have here on the boat, I am carrying the gorgeous paddle that you presented us at the spring rendezvous. So I can't wait to get to Lock 18 with that. And for those of you who weren't at the spring rendezvous or didn't see some of the social media posts, the staff back in 2019, I believe it was, at Lock 18, took a beautiful hand carved wooden paddle, had all the loopers coming through, sign it, and then varnished it. And with the intention of presenting it at the spring 2022, I'm sorry, spring 2020 rendezvous. And then of course, COVID happened. So Chad and everyone there at the Trent Severn held on to that for us and presented it at this year's 2022 spring rendezvous. So I've got it aboard and can't wait to get there with it and show them how much we appreciate it. So Chad, we also appreciate you being here. Thanks for once again giving us some of your time.
One thing
Yeah.
now, Pat and Jeremy are both at Hastings, so they're back together again at that spot. They don't know
Perfect.
you're coming.
Oh, they don't.
So we've tried to keep it away from them. So when you see them and you're going to have the paddle, they're finally going to get that sort of name face with you directly. So
Oh,
they know a
perfect.
bunch of loopers are in the system, but they
Yeah.
don't know you in particular coming back with their paddle. So Pat and Jeremy, they're going to be pretty surprised when they see you in a few weeks.
Excellent. Can't wait to surprise them with it then. I'll look forward to that.
Perfect.
All right. Chad, thanks for sharing all of the details. We greatly appreciate it. And here's to a very smooth season from here on out throughout the system. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Kim. See you later, Loopers.
Thanks.
Enjoy your
and
trip.
thank you. And thanks to everyone who's joined us today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Great Loop Radio. Until then, safe cruising.